G'day guys, Ian from Cookie's Critters, and today we're going to show you how to set up a bearded dragon enclosure. Now guys, if you are new to this channel and you haven't already done so, please subscribe and turn on those post notifications, and we'll see you after the intro. Okay guys, so the first thing that we want to discuss is the appropriate enclosure size. Now we did a video a while back and we gave a very basic minimum recommendation of a 3-foot enclosure. Now guys, you need to take this in context. If you have a young hatchling or a young juvenile bearded dragon, a 3-foot enclosure is perfectly appropriate in terms of size. Now, as your bearded dragon does grow and become an adult bearded dragon, we always recommend one of these, a 4-foot or a 120 by 60 by 60 centimeter enclosure. Now, the benefit of a large enclosure like this is it gives you the clearly defined zones for your hot basking, your warm side, and your cool side, but it also allows your bearded dragon to freely move around and give them all the opportunities to have natural enrichment. Now guys, obviously if you have the luxury of space and you can go larger than 4 foot, bigger is better. Just make sure that you can adequately heat and have your right temperature zones. Now while we are talking about lighting and heating, we are going to move the camera in and we're going to actually show you a close-up of the lighting display inside this enclosure. Okay, so as we can see, we have a single socket for your basking light, a clear basking light, not a ceramic heat emitter, not a red globe, not a colored globe, a clear basking light. We also have a long T5 UVB. Now this enclosure is a 4-foot enclosure, so we have used a 3-foot T5 or a 39 watt T5 UVB. And as you can notice, both of the lights are side by side. There is a direct overlap, so when the bearded dragon is on the basking ledge or on a hammock or on a branch but under the basking light, they are also getting their UVB as well. Now what you will notice is in some glass enclosures the basking light is on this side and the UVB coil light is all the way on the other side. Now, what this means is the bearded dragon, while it's basking, is getting no UVB. And we all know bearded dragons spend most of the day basking, not in the actual cool side. So having them side by side, having that direct overlap of heat and UVB is super critical. Now, talking about heat and basking zones, obviously we have a custom 3D background that we've made for this enclosure, and we've also incorporated basking ledges for the dragons to sit on and to soak up their heat. Now, considerations are your depth and your distance away from your basking light to your basking ledge, or to your hammock, or to your basking log, etc., etc. If your dragon can get too close and touch the light, then you need to have the consideration to have a heat cage surrounding your basking light. We don't want our beardies to get burnt. Now, the downside to these foam backgrounds is they are expensive unless you can make them yourself. Even then, they aren't cheap to make. Alternatives are you can pick up your branches from either your pet store. Something like this grapevine branch would probably cost around about $80 in a pet store, but it is a naturalistic piece. It does look beautiful. Alternatively, you can just go out to the bush, pick up something off the ground, bring it home. As long as you treat it with boiling water, it gets rid of any mites, any ticks, ants, spiders, etc., etc. Boiling water, you don't need to bake it, you don't need to douse it with insecticides. In fact, we recommend don't use insecticides because unless it's a mac mite, something used and appropriate for reptiles, insecticides may cause issues with your feeder insects, therefore potentially cause issue with your bearded dragon. We've already touched on it, but hammocks. Now, obviously, you can use a hammock. You can buy something from a pet store, or you can buy a similar product to this. Now, this one here from a pet store probably would have been 20 to 30 bucks. Now, if you went to a hardware store, and here in Oz, if you go to somewhere like Bunnings, you can pick up a seagrass. This is a seagrass mat. a seagrass doormat for about $3. Now, they are a lot bigger than this piece, so you may have to cut it and weave it yourself to hem the edge. But for $3 as opposed to $30, the seagrass mat from your hardware shop or from your local dollar shop is a great option. Now, on the issue of dollar shops and hardware stores, a lot of these places do have artificial hedge walls or vine walls. So rather than having something like this, you can cover the whole background with an artificial vine. It is a great option, a great solution. It's quick, it's easy, it's simple, and heaps of green. Looks beautiful. Okay, now we've covered off on the heating situation, we've covered off on the lighting. Now the next thing is whether or not you are going to use a thermostat. Now here at Cookies Critters, we always recommend to all our customers that a thermostat is 100% a must. It is required. There's no reason why you shouldn't be using a thermostat for any kind of heat source, like a heat mat, a heat panel, a basking light, etc., etc. If you want to look after your bearded dragon, if you don't want them getting cooked on a hot day, a thermostat is going to do that job. Not only will it regulate the heat in the enclosure, but with these ones here that do have a timer inbuilt, they are fully programmable. The lights are going to turn on automatically. It's fully automated. At night time, the lights are going to switch off, and you don't need to think about it. You just set and forget, and then you can just spend time looking after your bearded dragon rather than worrying about, did I remember to turn the lights off after you've gone to bed. Now, with the thermostat, there is the issue of correct thermostat probe placement. Now, we've already talked about the basking zone, the warm side, the hot side, the cold side, all these different zones, but the probe will only measure ambient air temperature, not surface temperature of the basking zone. Obviously, where your lizard is basking, whether it's on a ledge, whether it's on a branch, that needs to be measured by an infrared temperature gun. So that's one of these guys here, right? Simply, it is a point and push. You use the little infrared dot, as we can see here moving around. If my cat was here, it'd be going nuts. But we point the infrared gun at the surface that we want to measure the heat, and it gives us a reading. In this situation, it is 25.6 degrees Celsius. Obviously, the lights aren't on. This enclosure is not even switched on. But this will give you a surface temperature. The thermostat will only give air temp. Now, this is where we use this to monitor the basking spot. The probe from the thermostat is going to measure our hot side or our cold side. Now, you need to choose which one you want to set it on, because then your temperature variation to what you set will be different. If you put your probe on your cool side, then you need to set the temperature for around about 28 to 30 degrees. And if the cold side gets hotter than 30 degrees, it'll turn your lights off. If you put the probe on your hot side, so over here, I always recommend having it, if your basking spot is about there, because that's about 30 centimeters away from the UVB, about 20 centimeters away from the actual basking line, if you just drop it down another 10 centimeters and set your probe for about 35 degrees, then you are going to have a good warm spot, but you're also going to have your nice focused hot basking spot of your 42, 45 degrees, which we are monitoring with our infrared temperature gun. Okay guys, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is this bad boy just here, your washed play sand, your substrate. Now, bearded dragons, they do need a loose, coarse substrate for one, for their femoral paws, and the second one is for their overall nail length. But it also assists with other things like your shedding as well. Now, a loose substrate like sand, and especially a washed play sand, if your bearded dragon does eat it, if it ingests it while it's licking and eating its food, then it will digest and it will pass the sand out, providing that you have the right heat, the right temperature, and the right UVB, and that you do have a clean enclosure. If you don't have the right heat and you haven't got the right UVB and you've got a filthy enclosure, it doesn't matter what substrate you have, your dragon's not going to be healthy anyway. So high temperatures, clean enclosures, the right sand, and you haven't got an issue with using sand as a substrate. Now, if you go to your local pet store and you pick up the red desert sand or the repti sand, the calci sand, the white stuff, these are artificially dyed to serve a purpose, and that is an aesthetic thing. Now, the downside to this is the additives in there and the calcium-rich sand creates a very sticky and clumpy sand. If your bearded dragon eats that sand, then the stickiness will cause the dragon to get an intestinal impaction. Other options that you can use are vinyl tiles and slate tiles. Now, they both have their pros and cons. Vinyl is very easy to clean, but being an artificial product, it doesn't actually allow the bearded dragon to rub off its femoral paws to help with its shedding and to maintain trimmed, nice, neat little manicured nails. Now, the downside to slate is it is a porous material, and therefore bacteria, feces, all these kind of things can actually absorb into the tile itself. So wash play sand by far is my #1 recommendations. Things that I don't like are your reds and your white repti sands and your reptile artificial carpets. Now, you know, you may be using artificial carpet and you may use it well and never have an issue. With the amount of dragons that I had, even just having one dragon rip off a toenail and have a bleeding toe was enough for me to decide I don't like the artificial reptile grass. Now, obviously, if you want to use it and you have no issue using it, then please do. I always recommend, if you're going to do it, then have a redundant, a spare piece of artificial grass, so that way when you pull one out to give it a clean and disinfect, then you can put a fresh one back in and the other one can be outside drying under natural sunlight and killing out any bacteria. Now, so we touched on it before with the lighting, but having the correct UVB, and I always recommend to my customers to go for a T5 UVB. They are a higher output. They are nice and long, therefore you're going to get your nice long coverage. As you can see, this almost actually goes past the 2/3 coverage. Now, the percentage is the main thing that we do need to be mindful of. If you've got a bearded dragon, you want to aim for at least 10% UVB. This is an Arcadia 12% UVB, but I would not be using a 14% inside this enclosure. Obviously, the 14% Arcadias are made to sit above a glass enclosure to have the high output go through the mesh. Obviously, once UVB penetrates through mesh, then you do have a diminished capacity. You lose about 33%, and that's according to Arcadia as well, so you can quote me on that. You will lose 33% going through reptile mesh. Now, if you had a 14% inside this enclosure, the UV index would be too high. I have done a video, if you are interested in checking out how to choose the appropriate UVB and the different shapes and the different lighting profiles, follow that link above. It'll answer all the questions that you have. But choosing the right UVB is definitely an appropriate thing to set up your enclosure properly. Okay, so we've got our basking spot in, we've got a background, we've got a branch, maybe we've got a hammock, etc, etc. Other things to consider is a hide for your bearded dragon. Now, what a hide will do is it'll allow your bearded dragon to, one, have somewhere safe to go and hide out, hence the reason why it's called a hide. They can go and hide and feel safe in that little spot. Now, obviously, you can find something that's better color match. I just grabbed this out of my spare little accessories box, but obviously pick something that's more appropriate to the size of the dragon as well. Baby dragons, smaller hides. Anyway, I always recommend put this on the cool side. It allows the bearded dragon to escape the heat, escape the UVB, and in a situation where they may feel stressed or threatened, it's somewhere they can go and retreat and feel safe. The next thing is a food bowl. Now, you don't need to get something that looks like a rock, one of these reptile specific kind of food bowls. You can just go to an op shop and just recycle or upcycle an old porcelain dish. It doesn't really matter. All you're going to be doing is putting some salad on there. Now, the placement of your salad, it may seem like a pretty dumb thing to make a point of mentioning it, but please put your salad on the cool side of your enclosure. Obviously, we've got our basking spot over here where Lemon Grab is currently sitting. That's your basking line. If you had your salad bowl directly underneath the basking line, your greens are going to turn into oven-dried chips pretty quick. So at least having it on the cool side, they are going to stay fresher for longer. Okay, so this next one, it causes a lot of debate. Now, a water bowl. Do you use it? Do you not use it? Now, I say to people, use this thing. God gave you a brain, use some common sense. If you live in an area that is high in humidity, don't use a water bowl. If you are using a water bowl, don't put it directly underneath your basking line. Obviously, the heat above the still water is going to cause the water to evaporate and therefore increase the humidity in the enclosure. So once again, put your water bowl on the cool side. Some dragons will drink out of still water out of a bowl, some dragons won't. Some dragons will just go and play in there, splash around, use it as a bath, use it as a toilet. Either way, it's a form of natural enrichment and it is great for a bearded dragon. So if you can afford to use a bowl, if your humidity is permissive, things to consider with humidity is if you have high humidity, maybe you might need to have a dehumidifier in your reptile room. Maybe you need to increase the amount of ventilation inside your in your enclosure to get more natural air exchange and airflow through your enclosure. But water bowls are fine. Use your common sense before you use it. Obviously, monitor your humidity. If it gets high, remove the water bowl. Simple as that. Okay, so finishing it off for a aesthetic thing. Now, us as reptile keepers, we like to have our bearded dragons and our other reptiles in beautiful looking enclosures. So adding pops of color, so your greenery, is a great way to do that. Now, I have a very simple rule of thumb, is if it hangs from above and it uses gravity and its own natural weight to hang, then they are perfectly fine. And why I say that is these little hard plastic vines, they do not have a wire core on the inside. Obviously, it's just hanging down on gravity. It doesn't need to be reinforced. Now, the reason why I say that is things like this artificial eucalyptus, this gum tree. Now, it does have a rigid wire core because it is made to stand upright. I had a customer reach out to me and they had a little Pygmy Bearded dragon. It was a dragon that I did breed, and they had some artificial grass inside the enclosure, and the bearded dragon fell off its basking spot because they can be a bit clumsy, and it landed on the artificial grass. Now, the artificial grass had that wire core on the inside, and it actually impaled with 2 prongs of this wire core about 1.5 inches, 2 inches deep into the abdomen of the dragon. Now, while it was only a very superficial and under the scales, it did end up causing irreparable damage to the pygmy, and the pygmy did pass after about a month to 6 weeks worth of medical treatment intervention. It couldn't be saved. So guys, anything that sticks upwards is a no-no in my opinion. If you want to try it, by all means, but please do monitor the condition of your artificial stuff. Your hanging stuff is great. Other little exceptions are these little cactus things. They're cute, they're fun. You can put little skulls in there and little Aztec bits and pieces. They're all very cool. The only thing with your artificial greenery is make sure that if your bearded dragon is nibbling on it and having a little bit of a taste, that it just stops at a taste. If they're just eating a prong here, or they're just having a nibble on the end of a leaf and they realize it's not edible, because at the end of the day, this looks a lot like the salad that we're putting in a salad bowl. Why can't they eat it? If they just have a taste, then that's fine, leave it in there. If they start chewing whole leaves off here and you notice that they're actually stripping it, pull this out straight away. Stuff like this can cause an intestinal impaction. We don't want them to be eating artificial leaves. Hey guys, that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed the content, and if you did, please do hit that like button, and if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel and turn on those post notifications. Guys, if you have any questions, queries, any feedback, please leave it down in the comment section below. Guys, liking and subscribing to our channel, it shows us that you appreciate what we're doing. It helps us continue what we are doing. We do want to educate as many people as we can. And guys, until next time, if you've got them, keep your beard treated and your beardies heated.